The biting salt wind whipped across Thomas's face, carrying the harsh smell of tar, stale rum, and unwashed bodies, a smell that had become his constant companion since he was forcefully dragged onto the deck of the Sea Serpent 3 weeks ago, a merchant ship turned pirate vessel whose dark, splintered wood seemed to groan under the weight of untold secrets, and as the ship cut through the churning, dark green waves, heading deeper into the unknown, Thomas often found himself staring at the distant horizon, a thin, blurry line where the sky met the sea, wondering if he would ever see the gentle hills of his homeland again, or if this terrifying ship, with its towering, patched sails that seemed to claw at the clouds, would be his tomb, slowly swaying with the rhythm of the ocean, a rhythm that was both calming and deeply unsettling, promising both adventure and certain doom, especially since strange things had started to happen. Things that whispered of a hidden danger far greater than any storm or enemy cannon, things that made the grizzled, rough-looking pirates, who usually seemed fearless, cast nervous glances over their shoulders when they thought no one was watching, their loud, booming laughter sometimes dying down into an uncomfortable silence when the ship sailed into particularly foggy waters, or when a certain, unsettling song was hummed too loudly by a new recruit. A song that supposedly called out to the spirits of the deep, a song that was forbidden on the Sea Serpent but which sometimes slipped out from the lips of the younger, more foolish sailors, only to be quickly cut off by a sharp glare from an older, more superstitious crewmate, and the ship itself felt alive, its timbers creaking and groaning like a living beast, moaning with every roll of the waves, a constant symphony of old wood and the vast, unending sea, a symphony that played a different tune at night, when the deck was dark and only the stars and the ship's faint lanterns provided light, a time when whispers seemed to multiply and shadows danced with a life of their own, making even the bravest pirate feel a prickle of unease down their spine, and Thomas, a young cabin boy, barely 15, had tried his best to blend in, to make himself small and unnoticeable, scrubbing the decks until his hands were raw, polishing brass until it gleamed, carrying heavy buckets of seawater, and dodging the angry glares and rough pushes of the seasoned pirates, men whose faces were etched with deep lines from sun and hardship, whose hands were scarred and calloused from years of fighting and sailing, men who seemed to carry a history of violence in their very bones, and their captain, a fearsome man named Captain Blackheart, was even more unsettling, a towering figure with a black eye patch that covered a missing eye, a scarred face, and a booming voice that could command both the wildest storm and the most rebellious sailor. His presence alone enough to silence a noisy deck. His eyes, the one visible eye a piercing, cold blue, seemed to see everything, seemed to know all the hidden thoughts, all the secret fears, and Thomas had seen him on rare occasions, standing alone at the ship's helm, staring out into the vast emptiness of the ocean, a look of profound, almost ancient sadness on his face, a look that quickly vanished when anyone approached, replaced by his usual grim, unfeeling mask. And it was Captain Blackheart who enforced the strict, unspoken rules of the Sea Serpent, rules that went beyond mere discipline, rules that hinted at something deeper, something darker, like the rule that no one was allowed to go into the captain's cabin unless called, a common enough rule on any ship, but on the Sea Serpent, it was enforced with a chilling intensity, a silent threat that hung heavy in the air, ensuring absolute obedience. And there was also the strange rule about the ship's figurehead. A beautifully carved wooden mermaid with long, flowing hair and a hauntingly sad expression, a figurehead that Captain Blackheart sometimes touched with a gentle, almost reverent hand, a gesture so unlike his usual harsh demeanor that it sent shivers down Thomas's spine, making him wonder about the connection between the fearsome captain and the sad wooden woman at the ship's bow, and another peculiar rule, whispered only in the darkest corners of the lower deck, was that no one should ever look directly into the eyes of the parrot, a large, colorful bird named Whisper that often sat on Captain Blackheart's shoulder, its feathers a brilliant mix of green and gold, its beady black eyes seeming to watch everything with an unnatural intelligence, a knowing gaze that made even the toughest pirates uneasy, making them quickly look away when the parrot turned its head towards them, as if it could read their very souls, or perhaps carry their secrets to the captain and Thomas, being new and often assigned to clean the captain's quarters when Captain Blackheart was on deck or ashore, had more opportunities than most to notice these small, strange details that slowly, unsettlingly, began to add up, forming a picture of a ship that was not just a pirate vessel, but something else, something far more mysterious and dangerous, a floating enigma on the vast, open sea. And he had noticed the captain's cabin, while mostly simple and practical, had a small, locked chest hidden under his bed, a chest made of dark, old wood bound with thick iron bands, and it was not the fact that it was locked that was strange, but the faint, almost imperceptible humming sound that sometimes seemed to come from it, a low, steady vibration that Thomas could only hear when the ship was very quiet, and when he was very close, a sound that felt ancient and alive, making his hairs stand on end, and he had once accidentally brushed against the captain's large, heavy sea chest, which sat in a corner, and a small, strangely carved wooden compass had fallen out from inside, a compass that looked very old, its face not pointing north, but instead having a single, coiled snake symbol at its center, with no other directions, just the snake, a symbol that reminded Thomas of something he couldn't quite place, a vague memory of an old tale, a childhood fear, making him quickly put it back, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and curiosity, wondering why a compass would show only a snake, and what it truly pointed to. And Thomas had also noticed the cook, a man named Grubb, who was usually loud and boisterous, telling jokes and singing sea shanties, but who sometimes, late at night, when he thought no one was around, would stand by the railing, staring out at the dark, churning water with a look of profound sadness, almost despair, a silent, heartbroken figure who seemed to be mourning something lost, or fearing something yet to come. And Thomas had once seen him quickly wipe a tear from his eye before turning back to his duties, a brief glimpse into the hidden sorrow of a man who otherwise seemed so jolly, a moment that made Thomas wonder if Grubb knew more about the ship's strange secrets than he let on, or if his sadness was connected to one of the unsettling disappearances that sometimes happened on the Sea Serpent, for indeed, people did vanish, not in battle, not in storms, but quietly, inexplicably, leaving behind only their empty hammocks and a growing sense of unease among the crew, like the young sailor, Finn, who had been on watch just 2 nights ago, a sturdy, cheerful lad who had shared a laugh with Thomas just hours before, talking about going home and seeing his family, but who was gone by morning, his post empty, his body nowhere to be found, and Captain Blackheart had simply declared he must have been swept overboard by a rogue wave. A common enough danger at sea, but the water had been strangely calm that night, not a storm in sight, and the experienced pirates had exchanged silent, knowing glances, their faces grim, their words unspoken, a collective understanding that something else, something more sinister, had claimed Finn, a fear that was palpable, almost a living presence on the ship, and after Finn's disappearance, the ship felt even heavier, the silence more pronounced, as if the very timbers were holding their breath, waiting for the next victim, and the whispers about the dead man's mark grew louder, a superstition among the crew that when someone vanished mysteriously, a faint, glowing mark, like a brand, would sometimes appear on the ship's mast, only visible under the light of a full moon, a mark that signaled the ship itself was cursed, hungry for souls. But Thomas had dismissed it as mere pirate superstition, the ramblings of fearful men, until one night, a night when the full moon, a huge silver disk, cast a ghostly light over the ship, painting the deck in shades of gray and silver. Thomas, unable to sleep, had quietly climbed onto the deck, and his eyes, drawn by an unknown force, had landed on the ship's main mast, and there, faintly, undeniably, glowing with a soft, eerie light, was a swirling, almost serpentine mark, a ghostly pattern that pulsed with a faint, green luminescence, a symbol that looked chillingly familiar, like the coiled snake on the compass, but far more ancient, more powerful, almost alive, a sight that made Thomas's blood run cold, making his heart leap into his throat, his breath catching as he stared at the terrifying mark, a mark that was indeed the dead man's mark, a horrifying confirmation that the ship was not just cursed, but actively involved in the disappearances, a living entity with a dark purpose, and he quickly hid, pressing himself against a coil of rope, his body trembling, as he heard footsteps approaching, the heavy, deliberate steps of Captain Blackheart, who walked directly towards the mast, his single blue eye staring at the glowing mark with a strange intensity, a look of both sorrow and grim acceptance on his scarred face. And he slowly reached out a hand, his callous fingers tracing the serpentine lines of the mark, almost as if he was caressing it, whispering something so low that Thomas couldn't hear, a private, intimate conversation between the captain and the cursed ship, a terrifying connection that confirmed Thomas's worst fears, that Captain Blackheart was not just the captain of a pirate ship, but something more. Something deeply tied to the ship's sinister nature, a dark guardian, or perhaps, a prisoner himself. And after Captain Blackheart walked away, his footsteps fading into the eerie quiet of the moonlit deck, Thomas stayed hidden for a long time, his mind reeling from what he had seen, the glowing mark, the captain's strange behavior, the chilling reality of the ship's hidden truth, and he knew then, with a sickening certainty, that the sea serpent was not just a ship, but a living, breathing monster, a creature of the deep. A cursed vessel that devoured its own crew, and he also knew that he had to find a way to escape, to uncover the full truth before he, too, became another victim, another name added to the dead man's mark, and the next few days were a blur of fear and forced labor, Thomas scrubbing, polishing, and dodging, his eyes constantly searching for clues, his ears straining for whispers, but everyone seemed to be on edge, the disappearance of Finn, followed by the appearance of the mark, casting a dark shadow over the entire crew, making them even more silent, more watchful, and Thomas noticed that Grubb, the cook, seemed even more withdrawn, his usual jolly demeanor replaced by a deep, brooding silence, his eyes often darting towards the mast, a look of profound dread on his face, a silent understanding of the ship's hunger. And one evening, as Thomas was cleaning the galley, scrubbing at the greasy pots and pans, Grubb, unusually quiet, came over to him, his heavy frame casting a large shadow over the small boy, and he spoke in a low, raspy whisper, his voice barely audible above the creaking of the ship. "You saw it, didn't you, lad? The mark. You saw it." Thomas froze, his heart pounding, his hand instinctively reaching for the small, dull knife he used for cutting vegetables, a useless weapon against a man like Grubb, but a symbol of his desperate fear, and he slowly nodded, his voice a shaky whisper. "Yes. I saw it." What does it mean?" Grubb sighed, a deep, heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of countless years of sorrow. "It means the ship is hungry, lad. Always hungry. And the captain, he feeds it. Keeps it happy. Or else it takes us all." His words were chilling, confirming Thomas's worst fears that the ship was indeed alive, a monstrous entity with a terrible appetite, and that Captain Blackheart was its unwilling servant, its grim provider. A terrifying revelation that explained the captain's sad eyes, his strange connection to the figurehead, his solitary watches, and Thomas, his voice trembling, asked, "Feeds it? What does it eat?" Grubb looked at him, his eyes filled with a profound despair, a silent plea for understanding. "Souls, lad. It eats souls. Strong ones. Brave ones. It takes them into the deep. Into a place where the sun never shines, and the screams never end." His words painted a horrifying picture in Thomas's mind, a picture of eternal suffering, of souls trapped in an endless, dark abyss, a fate far worse than death. And Grubb continued, his voice growing even lower, even more urgent. "The captain, he found this ship years ago. Adrift. Empty. But not truly empty. It had a spirit. An old, evil spirit. A siren of the depths trapped in its timbers. And it made a deal with him. Power. Riches. A fearsome crew. In exchange for sacrifices. Every full moon, when the mark glows, it takes one soul for its hunger. To keep its power. To keep us safe from its true wrath." The story was unbelievable, horrifying, a dark fairy tale brought to life on the high seas, a tale of a cursed ship, a trapped siren, and a captain bound by a terrible, bloody oath. And Thomas, his mind reeling, tried to process this unbelievable truth. "But why does he do it? Why doesn't he fight it? Why doesn't he leave?" Grubb shook his head, a look of profound sadness on his face. "He tried, lad. He tried to leave once. Years ago. This ship, it wouldn't let him. It brought a storm unlike any seen before, a storm of pure rage, and it took his family. His wife. His child. Swept them overboard. Right before his eyes. A warning. A terrible warning, to remind him of his oath. He's been its prisoner ever since. Its feeder. Its guardian. He tries to pick the ones who won't be missed as much, the ones who are already broken. But sometimes the ship chooses. And it chooses the strong ones. The tragic story of Captain Blackheart, a man once strong and free, now reduced to a tormented servant of a monstrous ship, filled Thomas with a new kind of fear, a profound pity for the captain, but also a growing understanding of the deadly trap they were all in, a trap that even the fearsome Blackheart couldn't escape, a curse that bound them all to a watery, soul-devouring grave, and Grubb, seeing the terror in Thomas's eyes, quickly looked around, his face suddenly tense. Enough talk. Too much. Someone might hear. Be careful, lad. The ship, it has ears. And it has eyes. Even in the dark. It knows when you speak of its secrets. He quickly walked away, leaving Thomas alone in the dimly lit galley, the metallic clang of pots and pans now sounding like a sinister warning, and the ship's timbers, which had been merely creaking before, now seemed to whisper, a low, guttural murmur that resonated with Grubb's story, a silent, chilling confirmation of its living, evil presence, and Thomas felt a profound sense of isolation. Surrounded by men who either knew the truth and were trapped, or who were too blind to see it, living in a constant state of fear and denial, and he knew he had to find a way to not just escape the sea serpent, but to somehow free Captain Blackheart from his terrible oath, to break the ship's curse, to stop its endless hunger for souls, a task that seemed utterly impossible for a cabin boy with no power, no allies, and no knowledge of the deep, dark magic that bound the ship, but the image of Finn, of Old Man Hemlock from his previous nightmares of the workhouse, of all the vanished souls, burned in his mind, fueling a desperate resolve, a quiet, unyielding determination, and he remembered the strange wooden compass with the coiled snake, and the hidden chest in Captain Blackheart's cabin that hummed faintly, and the figurehead with the sad mermaid face, all these seemingly unrelated details now clicking into place, forming a terrifying mosaic of the sea serpent's dark secrets. All connected to the trap siren and its unholy hunger, and he realized that the key to understanding, to fighting this evil, must lie within the captain's quarters, within the very heart of Blackheart's torment, a dangerous place, a forbidden place, but also, perhaps, their only hope, and he knew he needed to get into the captain's cabin, to find the compass, to unlock the humming chest, to understand the full extent of the ship's curse. But how? The captain's cabin was always locked, guarded by Silas or other trusted pirates when Blackheart was away, and even when he was inside, no one dared to approach, such was his fearsome reputation, a reputation that kept everyone, including Thomas, at a safe, terrified distance, and Thomas spent the next few days planning, watching, observing the captain's movements, the guard's schedules, trying to find a weak spot. A small window of opportunity, a moment when the cabin might be unguarded, or when the captain might be distracted, a dangerous game of cat and mouse played out on the vast, unforgiving ocean, and he noticed that Captain Blackheart sometimes took long, solitary walks on the quarterdeck late at night, when the moon was hidden by clouds, when the ship was quiet, and during these walks, he seemed lost in thought, his guard down, his back often turned to his cabin. A fleeting moment of vulnerability that Thomas seized upon as his only chance, and so, one night, when the moon was indeed hidden, and the ship was quiet save for the creaking timbers and the gentle lapping of waves against its hull, Thomas waited, his heart pounding, his body trembling with a mixture of fear and desperate determination, until he saw Captain Blackheart standing alone on the quarterdeck, staring out at the inky blackness, his back to the cabin, lost in his sorrow, and Thomas, taking a deep breath, silently crept towards the captain's cabin, his bare feet making no sound on the wooden deck, his small figure almost invisible in the deep shadows, and he found the door, heavy and solid, and to his surprise it was not locked, merely latched, a small, almost careless oversight, perhaps a sign of Blackheart's deep despair, or perhaps a deliberate test, a trap set for the curious. But Thomas had no time to ponder the meaning, no time to doubt, and he slowly, carefully, pushed the door open, a faint, metallic squeak echoing in the silence, and he slipped inside, into the heart of the captain's domain, a place filled with the lingering smell of rum, old tobacco, and something else, and Thomas's eyes quickly scanned the cabin, searching for the humming chest, for the strange compass, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, and he spotted the heavy sea chest in the corner, and carefully, silently, he knelt beside it, his fingers fumbling for the latch, and as he opened it, he found not gold or jewels, but piles of old, yellowed maps, strange, indecipherable charts, and at the very bottom, nestled among a heap of ancient parchments, was the wooden compass, its coiled snake symbol now seeming to glow faintly in the dim light, almost calling to him, and he carefully picked it up, its smooth, cold wood feeling strangely powerful in his hand, and as he held it, he noticed a faint, almost invisible inscription carved into its base, tiny, ancient letters that he couldn't quite read, but which seemed to pulse with a hidden energy. And then, from under the captain's bed, he pulled out the dark, iron-bound chest, the source of the faint humming sound, a sound that was now much louder, a low, steady vibration that seemed to emanate from within the wood itself, making the chest feel alive, and Thomas tried to open it, pulling at the latch, but it was locked, firmly secured, without any visible keyhole, a puzzle that seemed designed to frustrate, to keep its secrets hidden, and he ran his fingers over the dark wood, feeling the intricate carvings, searching for a hidden mechanism. A secret button, anything that would reveal its contents, and then, he noticed a small, almost invisible indentation on the side of the chest, a tiny, circular hollow, perfectly shaped for something to fit inside, and a sudden realization hit him, a flash of insight, as he looked at the compass in his other hand, its base fitting perfectly into the indentation on the chest, a secret key, a hidden connection, and with trembling hands, he carefully placed the compass into the hollow, twisting it gently, and with a soft click, the chest unlocked, its lids slowly creaking open, revealing not gold, not jewels, but a single, ancient scroll, made of dark, parchment-like material, tied with a thin, faded red ribbon, and a wave of cold air, strangely scented with salt and something metallic, drifted out from the chest, making Thomas shiver, a smell that felt ancient, powerful, and deeply unsettling, and he carefully reached inside, his fingers brushing against the rough texture of the scroll. And as he pulled it out, untying the ribbon with fumbling fingers, he unfurled it slowly, his eyes widening in the dim lantern light, for the scroll was not a map, not a treasure list, but a painting, a beautifully detailed, yet horrifying, painting of the sea serpent itself, but not as he knew it, not as a ship, but as a monstrous creature, its hull covered in scales, its masts like giant bones, its sails made of tattered, leathery wings, and its figurehead, the sad mermaid, was not wood, but living flesh, her eyes gleaming with a malevolent green light, her mouth open in a silent scream, her body entwined with a giant, coiled snake that wrapped around the entire ship, its head rearing up towards the sky, its fangs dripping with a luminous green venom, and beneath the monstrous ship, painted in swirling, dark blue and black, were countless human figures, their faces distorted in agony, their hands reaching out, trapped in the serpent's coils, their bodies slowly being absorbed into the ship's scaled hull, a horrifying depiction of the ship's true, deadly nature, a visual confirmation of Grubb's story, a terrifying revelation of the siren's hunger, and at the very bottom of the painting, written in elegant, ancient script, were words that Thomas could barely decipher, words that seemed to burn into his mind. The heart of the serpent, bound by blood, fed by souls, the curse of the kraken. The words were a chilling confirmation, solidifying the terrifying truth. The sea serpent was indeed a living monster, a siren of the depths, cursed and bound, its heart beating with the souls of its victims, and Captain Blackheart was its unwilling keeper, forced to feed its insatiable hunger. A horrifying legacy, a truth far stranger and deadlier than any pirate legend, and as Thomas stared at the painting, his mind reeling from the unbelievable horror, a sudden, sharp creak from the deck outside jolted him back to reality, his heart leaping into his throat, for he knew that sound, the familiar heavy step of Captain Blackheart, returning to his cabin, and Thomas quickly, frantically, tried to refold the scroll, to close the chest, to hide the compass, to erase all traces of his intrusion, but his hands were trembling, his movements clumsy with fear, and the captain's footsteps were getting closer, closer until they stopped right outside the cabin door, and Thomas froze, clutching the scroll and compass, his eyes wide with terror, listening to the slow, deliberate turn of the doorknob, knowing he had been caught, knowing his discovery would cost him his life, knowing that he was about to face the wrath of Captain Blackheart, and the wrath of the sea serpent itself, a wrath that promised to drag his soul into the green depths, a fate far worse than any death, a terrifying truth that was now, finally, staring him in the face, a truth he could no longer escape, as the cabin door slowly, menacingly, began to open, revealing the dark silhouette of Captain Blackheart, his single blue eye gleaming with an unnerving intensity in the dim light, his presence filling the cabin with a suffocating, terrifying power, a power that felt ancient and evil, ready to claim its next victim, Thomas, a small, helpless boy caught in the deadly coils of the sea serpent's dark secret. The heavy cabin door slowly, deliberately swung open, revealing Captain Blackheart's tall, imposing figure, his single blue eye, usually cold and unfeeling, now burning with an unnerving intensity that seemed to pierce through Thomas, seeing every hidden fear, every desperate thought, and in that agonizing moment, time seemed to stretch, the swaying lantern casting long, grotesque shadows that danced like mocking spirits around the cabin, making the intricate carvings on the wooden cabinet seem to writhe and coil. Like the very serpent of the painting Thomas still clutched, its terrifying image now feeling more real than ever before, a chilling prophecy unfolding before his very eyes, and Thomas froze, clutching the ancient scroll and the wooden compass to his chest, his heart pounding so violently he was sure the captain could hear it, his breath caught in his throat, every muscle in his small body tensed, preparing for the inevitable, for the brutal end he was sure awaited him. A terrible plunge into the green depths, a fate worse than any death, a permanent addition to the ship's dreadful hunger. But Captain Blackheart did not move, he simply stood there, filling the doorway, his massive form blocking out the last vestiges of light from the deck, his one visible eye fixed on Thomas with an unreadable expression, a mix of something Thomas couldn't quite understand. Was it anger, betrayal, or perhaps even a flicker of the deep, ancient sadness that Thomas had sometimes seen on his face when he thought he was alone? A moment of silent, unbearable tension that hung heavy in the air, thick with the lingering smells of rum, tobacco, and that strange, metallic, ancient scent from the open chest, a smell that now seemed to pulse around them, a living presence in the small, enclosed space. And then, Captain Blackheart slowly, deliberately, stepped into the cabin, his heavy boots thudding softly on the wooden floor, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence, and he closed the door behind him with a soft click, plunging the cabin into a deeper gloom, the single lantern now casting the only light, making the shadows even longer, more menacing. And he did not shout, he did not rage, he simply walked slowly towards Thomas, his eyes never leaving the boy, a silent, terrifying approach that was far more frightening than any angry outburst, and Thomas instinctively backed away, stumbling over his own feet, until his back hit the cold, hard wall, trapping him, making him feel like a cornered rat, completely helpless. And Captain Blackheart stopped just a few feet away, towering over him, his scarred face a grim mask, but his visible eye still holding that strange, complex emotion, and he spoke, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, a sound that was surprisingly calm, yet filled with an undeniable power. "So you found it, lad? The truth. The cursed heart of the sea serpent." His words, spoken without anger, yet with a profound weariness, confirmed that he knew everything, that he had seen Thomas's actions, perhaps even expected them, a chilling thought that made Thomas wonder if this entire situation was a carefully laid trap, a test, or a twisted invitation into the ship's dark secrets. And Thomas, unable to speak, could only nod, his body trembling uncontrollably, clutching the scroll and compass even tighter, as if they were his only shield against the captain's terrifying presence. And Captain Blackheart's gaze fell upon the unfurled painting in Thomas's hands, his eye lingering on the monstrous depiction of the ship, the coiled snake, the trapped souls, a profound sadness flickering in his cold blue eye. "The painting. It tells the tale, doesn't it? A truth few would believe. A truth I wish I never knew." He then looked at the wooden compass, still clutched in Thomas's other hand. "And the key? The key to its prison? The key to its hunger?" His voice was heavy, filled with a deep, ancient sorrow, a sorrow that seemed to come from the very timbers of the ship itself, a sorrow that was older than Thomas, older than even Grubb, a sorrow that had been carried across countless oceans, across centuries of torment, and he slowly reached out a hand, his callous fingers surprisingly gentle, and he carefully took the compass from Thomas's trembling grasp. His touch sending a strange, cold shiver through Thomas, a feeling of ancient power passing between them, and he then looked at the scroll, the terrifying painting, and he sighed, a deep, weary breath that sounded like the rustling of ancient sails in a dying wind. "Put it down, lad. It's too dangerous for you to hold. Too much truth, too much power for a young soul to bear." Thomas, feeling a strange mix of fear and a desperate obedience, slowly, carefully, placed the scroll onto the wooden table, its horrifying image now fully exposed in the flickering lantern light, a stark, undeniable testament to the ship's monstrous nature, and Captain Blackheart stared at the painting for a long moment, his single eye lost in its gruesome details. A silent conversation taking place between the captain and the painted horror, a dialogue of torment and despair, and then, he turned his gaze back to Thomas, his voice softer now, almost regretful. "You are a curious one, aren't you, Thomas? Too curious for your own good. Too observant for a cabin boy. You see things others choose to ignore. Or simply cannot see." His words were not a condemnation, but an observation, a recognition of Thomas's hidden abilities, his sharp mind, his unyielding spirit, a spirit that even the brutal workhouse, and now the terrifying sea serpent, had failed to break, and Thomas, finding his voice, a small, shaky whisper, asked the question that burned brightest in his mind. "The ship," Grubb said, "it eats souls. And you feed it. Is that true, Captain?" Captain Blackheart closed his visible eye for a moment, a spasm of pain crossing his scarred face, then opened it again, his gaze piercing. "Aye, lad. It is true. Every word. The sea serpent is cursed. Bound by an ancient dark magic. A siren of the depths, trapped within its timbers. And its hunger is endless. Insatiable. It demands souls to survive. To keep its power. To keep us safe from its true wrath. The curse of the Kraken, they call it. An old tale. A very old tale. One I foolishly stumbled upon." His voice was heavy with a terrible regret, a burden that seemed to weigh him down, making him look older, more tired than Thomas had ever seen him, and he slowly walked over to his large wooden chair behind the table, collapsing into it with a weary sigh, his gaze fixed on the painting. "Years ago, Thomas. Years ago, I was a different man. A merchant captain. With a family. A wife. A child. Just like you, I sought adventure, but also a peaceful life. Then, a terrible storm. A storm of unimaginable fury. It came upon us suddenly, from nowhere. My ship was destroyed. My crew lost. I was adrift. Alone. Clinging to a piece of wreckage. Close to death. And then I saw it. The sea serpent. Floating silently. Unharmed. Like a ghost ship. I swam to it. Hoped for salvation. But what I found was something else. Something far worse than death." His voice dropped to a low, haunted whisper, painting a vivid, terrifying picture in Thomas's mind, a picture of a desperate man, clinging to life, only to find himself ensnared in an even greater nightmare, and he continued, his gaze distant, lost in the horrors of his past. "The ship was empty. Or so I thought. But the moment I stepped aboard I felt it. A presence. Cold. Ancient. Malevolent. It spoke to me. Not with words, but with whispers in my mind. Promises of power. Riches beyond imagining. A crew of the fiercest pirates. All I had to do was agree. Agree to be its keeper. Its feeder. To keep its hunger at bay. To sacrifice one's soul every full moon, to maintain the balance. To prevent its true wrath from being unleashed upon the world." The story was chilling, a tragic tale of a man's desperate choice, a choice born of survival, twisted into a lifetime of torment, a pact with an ancient evil, and Thomas, despite his fear, felt a profound pity for Captain Blackheart, a man who had lost everything, who was now bound to a monstrous fate, a prisoner on his own ship, forced to become a monster himself, and he asked, his voice softer now, "And if he refused?" What would happen? Blackheart's single eye hardened, a flicker of raw terror in its depths. It would unleash the Kraken, lad. The true Kraken. Not just a legend. A beast of unimaginable power. A creature of the abyss, bound to the sea serpent by the same dark magic. It would rise from the depths, and it would destroy everything. Every ship. Every port. Every living soul on the sea. My family, they were just a warning. A taste of its power. When I tried to break free, it took them, right before my eyes, to remind me of my oath, to bind me forever. The captain's voice cracked, revealing a raw, ancient pain, a deep wound that had never healed, the source of his profound sadness, his constant torment. And Thomas now understood the full, horrifying truth. Captain Blackheart was not just a cruel pirate, but a tormented soul, a guardian of a terrible secret, forced to commit unspeakable acts to protect the world from an even greater evil, a living sacrifice to a monstrous curse. And he looked at the painting again, the coiled snake, the trapped souls, the monstrous ship, now seeing it through new eyes, understanding the depth of its power, the horror of its hunger, and he realized that his own fate was now intertwined with this terrible curse, that he too was a prisoner, bound to the sea serpent, and he looked at the captain, a strange resolve hardening in his young heart. There must be a way, Captain. A way to break the curse. To free the ship. To free you. Captain Blackheart let out a bitter, humorless laugh, a dry, rattling sound that seemed to mock their very hope. There is no way, lad. I have searched every chart, every legend, every whisper of ancient magic. The curse is eternal, bound by blood, fed by souls. It can never be broken. His words were heavy, final, crushing any glimmer of hope that had sparked in Thomas's chest, but Thomas, remembering Grubb's desperate sorrow, his hidden kindness, and the image of Finn, of Old Man Hemlock from his previous nightmares, refused to give up, a fierce, defiant spark burning in his young eyes. There has to be. There must be a weakness. Something. This compass, Captain. What is this inscription? He pointed to the faint, almost invisible letters carved into the base of the wooden compass, the one Captain Blackheart still held, and the captain looked down at the compass, his eye narrowing, his fingers tracing the ancient script. An old language, lad. Few can read it. It speaks of the heart of the Kraken, the source of its power, a sunken city, hidden deep in the abyss, protected by guardians. And it says, only a pure heart, unburdened by greed, can sever the serpent's binding. Only a soul that seeks not power, but freedom, can still the Kraken's roar. His voice was slow, hesitant, as if the words themselves were difficult to speak, revealing a truth he had long buried, a secret hope he had long abandoned, and Thomas's eyes widened, a sudden, powerful surge of understanding washing over him. A pure heart, unburdened by greed. That's it. You, Captain, you have been trying to fight it, but you are still bound by the oath, by the power it promised you, by the lives you feel responsible for. But I have nothing to lose. I seek only freedom. Not just for myself, but for you. For all the souls trapped by the sea serpent. His voice was filled with a desperate, youthful passion, a conviction that seemed to momentarily cut through Captain Blackheart's deep despair, and the captain looked at Thomas, his single blue eye widening slightly, a flicker of something Thomas hadn't seen before, surprise, perhaps, or a nascent, fragile hope, passing across his scarred face. A pure heart, unburdened by greed. You, lad? You think you can do what I, a seasoned pirate, a man who has plumbed the depths of the ocean and human depravity, could not? His voice was still laced with skepticism, but there was a subtle shift, a crack in his usual grim facade, and Thomas, emboldened by this small opening, pressed on. The painting, Captain! It shows the serpent entwined with the ship, the souls being absorbed. And the Kraken's curse. But what if the painting is not just a depiction, but a map? His voice trailed off, a new, dangerous possibility opening up, a faint, almost forgotten dream of freedom stirring in his weary soul, and Thomas continued, his voice urgent. And the humming chest, Captain? The one under your bed. The one this compass unlocks. What else does it hold? What other secrets? Captain Blackheart looked at the chest, then back at Thomas, a slow, almost imperceptible nod of his head. The chest, it holds the ship's true log. Not the one for the crew. The one for the siren. It records every sacrifice. Every curse. And it holds the true legend of the Kraken. The one that was kept hidden. The one that speaks of its weakness. Of how it can be contained. Not broken. Never truly broken. But contained. His words offered a tantalizing glimmer of hope, not for complete freedom, but for an end to the endless hunger, for an end to the sacrifices, a chance to free Captain Blackheart from his terrible oath. And Thomas felt a surge of exhilaration, knowing they were on the right path, that the answers lay within the chest, within the deeper secrets of the sea serpent, and he looked at the captain, his gaze unwavering. Then we must open it, Captain. We must read the true log. We must find the weakness. And we must find the sunken city. Captain Blackheart stared at Thomas for a long moment, his single eye searching the boy's face, weighing his sincerity, his courage, his purity of heart, and then, a slow, grim smile, a rare, almost painful expression, touched his lips. "Aye, lad. You may be right. Perhaps there is a way. A desperate, impossible way. But perhaps it is worth the risk. For Finn. For my family. For all the lost souls. But you must understand, Thomas. This path, it is fraught with danger. The ship itself will fight us. Its crew, unknowingly, will protect its hunger. And the Kraken does not take kindly to those who seek to sever its binding. It will unleash its full wrath. A wrath that could tear this ship, and us, to pieces." His words were a stark warning, a reminder of the immense power they were up against, but Thomas, his resolve hardened by the horrors he had seen, by the hope that now burned brightly in his heart, simply nodded, his eyes filled with a fierce determination. "I understand, Captain. But we must try. We must fight. For freedom." Captain Blackheart looked at him, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his cold blue eye. "Then so be it, cabin boy. We will face this together. You and I. The boy with the pure heart, and the captain bound by blood. A strange alliance indeed." He reached down and picked up the wooden compass, his fingers tracing the coiled snake symbol, and then, with a decisive movement, he placed it back into the indentation on the iron-bound chest, twisting it gently, and with a soft click, the chest opened again, revealing the ancient scroll, and beneath it, a thick, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age, its cover unadorned, the true log of the sea serpent. And Captain Blackheart pulled it out, his fingers trembling slightly as he opened it, and as he began to read the strange, cramped writing, the ancient words of the true legend, the real history of the Kraken and its curse, the story unfolded before them, not just of a monstrous beast, but of an ancient pact, a forgotten civilization, and a powerful, terrible magic that bound the Kraken to the sea serpent, making the ship its eternal prison and its feeder. And the log detailed the rituals of sacrifice, the dark incantations needed to appease the siren, the exact location of the sunken city where the heart of the Kraken lay hidden, a city that was not just underwater, but in a different dimension, a place between worlds, a terrifying nexus of ancient power, and it also spoke of the guardians, not monstrous beasts, but spirits, the souls of those who had tried to break the curse in the past, forever bound to protect the Kraken's heart, their forms twisted and tormented, their minds warped by the siren's power, a chilling warning of the fate that awaited those who failed. And as Captain Blackheart read on, his voice a low, somber murmur, Thomas listened intently, his mind racing, trying to absorb every word, every detail, every chilling truth that was now being revealed, a truth far grander, far more ancient and terrible than he could have ever imagined, a truth that spoke of cosmic horrors and forgotten gods, a truth that went beyond mere pirate legends and entered the realm of true, terrifying magic, and the log described the only way to sever the serpent's binding, a ritual that required not strength, but purity, not power, but sacrifice, a ritual that had to be performed in the heart of the sunken city, using a special artifact, the Pearl of the Abyss, a gem of immense power, hidden within the Kraken's lair, guarded by the most powerful spirits, and the ritual involved a delicate balance, a complex series of ancient spells and offerings, and a final, personal sacrifice, not of a life, but of a memory, the dearest memory of the one performing the ritual, to truly sever the bond between the siren and the kraken, to free Captain Blackheart from his oath, and to finally still the kraken's roar, containing its power forever. And as Captain Blackheart finished reading, the cabin was filled with a heavy silence, broken only by the creaking of the ship's timbers and the distant lapping of the waves. A silence that felt pregnant with the weight of ancient magic and imminent danger, and he looked at Thomas, his single blue eye gleaming with a new, fierce determination. The pearl of the abyss. The memory. It is a dangerous path, lad. A path that demands everything. But it is a path. A chance. And we shall take it. His voice was firm, resolute, the despair that had clouded him for so long now replaced by a grim resolve, a burning desire for redemption, for freedom, not just for himself, but for all the souls consumed by the sea serpent. And Thomas, looking at the captain, felt a surge of shared purpose, a bond forging between them, the unlikely alliance of a tormented pirate captain and a brave cabin boy, united against an ancient evil, and they spent the rest of the night poring over the true log cross, referencing its ancient charts with the painting on the scroll, slowly, painstakingly, mapping out the precise location of the sunken city, the treacherous currents that led to its hidden depths, the guardians that protected its entrance, a dangerous, impossible journey that would take them far beyond the known waters, into the uncharted, terrifying abyss. And as the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, a soft knocking came from the cabin door. The familiar, nervous knock of Grubb, the cook, signaling the start of a new day, a day that would be unlike any other, a day that would mark the true beginning of their desperate quest. And Captain Blackheart quickly closed the true log, locking it back in the iron-bound chest, and motioned for Thomas to hide the scroll and compass, his face quickly reverting to its usual grim mask. The brief glimpse of his pain and hope now carefully hidden away, and Thomas, his heart still pounding with the revelations of the night, quickly slipped the scroll back into the sea chest, tucking the compass into his pocket, its coiled snake symbol now feeling like a powerful talisman, a guide to their terrifying journey. And as Grubb entered, his eyes darting nervously around the cabin, his usual jolly facade already in place, he simply said, "Morning, Captain. Breakfast is ready. And the wind, it's fair. Good sailing today." Captain Blackheart nodded, his voice gruff. "Aye, Grubb. Good sailing. But this will be a journey unlike any other. Prepare the crew. We set a new course. Towards the uncharted deep. Towards the curse of the Kraken." His words, though seemingly routine, carried a hidden weight, a secret promise of the perilous adventure that lay ahead, a journey into the heart of a monstrous curse, a journey that would forever change the fate of the sea serpent and its unwilling crew, a journey that would finally confront the strange and deadly truth about life on a pirate ship, a truth that was far more ancient and terrifying than any legend. A truth that awaited them in the dark, silent depths of the ocean, a truth that would demand everything from Thomas and Captain Blackheart, a truth that promised either ultimate freedom or eternal damnation, a battle against the cosmic horror that was now not just a story, but a terrifying reality, a reality that pulsed with every creak of the ship's timbers, every lapping wave against its hull, every breath of the salty, unforgiving wind, a reality that they were now, finally, ready to face, together. A young cabin boy and a cursed pirate captain, bound by a desperate hope, and a shared, terrible secret, sailing towards the unknown, towards the very heart of the Kraken's dark domain, a journey that would redefine the very meaning of life and death on the high seas. The Sea Serpent, a vessel now laden with a heavier secret than any treasure, sliced through the morning waves, the salty wind whipping across its dark, weathered deck, pushing it steadily away from the familiar shipping lanes, away from the distant sight of any known land, and into the vast, shimmering expanse of the uncharted deep, a realm whispered about only in hushed tones by the oldest, most superstitious sailors. A place where maps ended and legends began, where the ocean's true, ancient power held sway, and Thomas, a mere cabin boy, stood by the railing, his small hands clutching the rough wood, his eyes fixed on the receding horizon, watching as the last faint outlines of known islands disappeared into the morning mist, a final farewell to the world he understood, a silent, terrifying embrace of the unknown, and a shiver, not entirely from the cold, ran down his spine as he felt the subtle shift in the ship's rhythm, a deeper, more purposeful sway, as if the sea serpent itself knew its destination, a silent, monstrous creature eagerly heading towards its ancient, terrible domain, and Captain Blackheart, standing tall at the helm, his single blue eye narrowed against the glare of the rising sun, commanded the ship with a new, grim determination, his usual harsh shouts replaced by quieter, more precise orders, his scarred face a mask of resolute purpose. Yet Thomas, with his new understanding, could almost see the invisible chains that bound the captain to this cursed vessel, the heavy weight of his oath, the burden of his past, the silent suffering for his lost family, all etched into the deep lines around his eye, a profound, ancient sadness hidden beneath the pirate's tough exterior, and the crew, usually boisterous and loud, were noticeably quieter, a strange tension hanging in the air among them, a collective unease that was almost palpable, as if they, too, felt the subtle shift in their journey, the unspoken understanding that this was no ordinary voyage, no mere hunt for gold or glory, but something else, something far more sinister, a journey into the heart of a terrifying legend, a journey from which many might not return. And Grubb, the cook, usually bustling about the galley with a cheerful, if sometimes grumpy, energy, now moved with a slow, deliberate solemnity, his head often bowed, his eyes frequently darting towards the main mast, where the faint, swirling mark of the dead man's mark had appeared under the last full moon, a ghostly reminder of the ship's insatiable hunger, a chilling prophecy of the sacrifices to come. And Thomas, during his chores, cleaning the brass, scrubbing the decks, felt the presence of the true log, tucked securely in Captain Blackheart's sea chest, its ancient pages holding the terrifying secrets of the Kraken's curse, the map to the sunken city, the ritual of containment, all burning in his mind. A heavy weight of knowledge that set him apart from the unsuspecting crew, a secret alliance forged in the captain's cabin, binding him to Blackheart in a desperate, impossible quest, and he often found his hand instinctively reaching for the wooden compass in his pocket, its smooth, cold surface and the coiled snake symbol a constant, tangible link to the monstrous serpent within the ship, a silent guide to the terrifying depths they were now sailing towards, a journey that demanded everything from his young soul, pushing him to be braver, smarter, more resilient than he had ever imagined. And the days that followed blurred into a long, monotonous stretch of open sea, the sky an endless dome of blue, the ocean an unending canvas of green and gray. But the normalcy of the sailing was only a thin veil over the growing strangeness, for the weather itself seemed to grow more unpredictable, the winds shifting without warning, the skies turning dark with sudden, violent squalls that lashed the ship with torrential rain and roaring gales, pushing the sea serpent violently back and forth, its timbers groaning louder, deeper, as if in protest, or perhaps, in a dark, eager anticipation. And during these storms, Thomas noticed how Captain Blackheart seemed to communicate with the ship, not with shouts, but with a silent understanding, his hand often resting on the helm, his single eye closed, as if listening to the whispers of the sea serpent itself, guiding it through the chaos with an unnerving precision, a terrifying dance between the captain and the cursed vessel, a desperate attempt to appease its monstrous will. And the crew, though hardened sailors, grew increasingly restless, their faces etched with a growing fear that went beyond the usual apprehension of a storm at sea, for these storms felt different, unnatural, as if conjured by an unseen hand, a malevolent force attempting to stop their journey into the deep. And whispers spread among the lower decks, tales of angry sea spirits, of the ocean itself trying to push them back, to prevent them from disturbing its ancient slumbers. And some of the older pirates, their faces pale, spoke of seeing strange lights dancing on the distant waves at night, ghostly glows that seemed to beckon them into the swirling mists, phantoms of the deep, guardians of the forbidden waters. And Thomas, remembering the true log's warnings about the guardians of the sunken city, felt a cold dread creep into his heart, knowing that these strange occurrences were not just superstitions, but real, terrifying warnings, the Kraken's initial, subtle attempts to deter them, to protect its hidden heart. And the compass in his pocket, which had always felt cool, now sometimes grew warm, almost hot, throbbing faintly with a strange, pulsing energy whenever they sailed into particularly treacherous currents or when the weather grew especially violent, its coiled snake symbol seeming to writhe and glow with a faint, internal light. A silent, mystical guide leading them deeper into the abyss, a living artifact responding to the ancient power surrounding them, and he would often glance at Captain Blackheart, wondering if the captain felt the same strange energy, if he too was guided by the compass's hidden pulse, and the captain, though never speaking of it, would sometimes glance down at his own hand, where a faint, almost invisible mark, like a brand, seemed to pulse with a similar, subtle energy. A silent connection to the cursed compass, a shared burden of their dangerous quest. And the ship's supplies, though carefully rationed, seemed to dwindle faster than expected, the barrels of water and salted meat diminishing with an unnerving speed, leading to shorter rations, growing hunger, and increasing grumbling among the crew, a subtle but dangerous descent that threatened to unravel the captain's control. For hungry men were desperate men, and desperate men were unpredictable. And Thomas watched as the crew's moods grew darker, their tempers shorter, their fights more frequent, their trust in Captain Blackheart slowly eroding, a dangerous situation brewing just beneath the surface of their desperate journey, and Captain Blackheart, sensing the growing unrest, tried to maintain order with his usual stern commands, his booming voice cutting through the rising tension. But even his authority seemed to waver slightly under the weight of the strange occurrences and the constant hunger. His single eye sometimes holding a flicker of fear, a brief moment of vulnerability that Thomas, with his sharpened senses, caught, realizing the immense pressure the captain was under, and the burden of his terrible secret, and one particularly dark, foggy night, a night when the air was thick and heavy, a night when the ship seemed to glide through an almost liquid darkness, a low, mournful wail drifted across the water, a sound unlike any Thomas had ever heard. A sound that was both heartbreakingly beautiful and deeply unsettling, a siren's call, a phantom song that seemed to wrap around the ship, pulling at the very souls of the men, and the crew, who had been huddled together for warmth and comfort, suddenly grew still, their faces pale in the faint lantern light, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a strange, almost hypnotic longing, as if the sound was calling to their deepest desires, their lost loves, their forgotten dreams, beckoning them into the swirling mists. And Thomas felt it too, a strange, powerful pull in his own heart, a yearning for the warmth of his lost home, for the gentle touch of his mother, a powerful longing that threatened to overwhelm him, to make him step over the railing and into the dark, inviting waters. But then, he remembered Grubb's words. "The ship is hungry, lad. Always hungry. And the captain, he feeds it. Keeps it happy. Or else it takes us all." And the true log's horrifying depiction of the siren, the monstrous creature entwined with the ship, its mouth open in a silent scream, its fangs dripping with green venom, a sudden surge of terror cutting through the siren's hypnotic call, breaking its spell, reminding him of the true danger, and he quickly looked at Captain Blackheart, who stood at the helm, his body rigid, his single eye closed tightly, his face contorted in a silent struggle, his hands gripping the helm with white knuckles. Fighting against the siren's ancient power, his own immense will battling the hypnotic pull, and then, with a tremendous effort, Captain Blackheart let out a guttural roar, a sound of raw pain and defiance that momentarily broke the siren's spell, shattering its mournful wail into 1,000 echoing fragments, and he shouted, his voice hoarse but powerful. "Hold fast, ye fools! Cover your ears! It's the siren! It seeks to claim your souls! Resist! Resist its whispers of false promise!" His words, though harsh, were a desperate warning, a lifeline thrown to his mesmerized crew, and the pirates, slowly, painfully, began to shake off the siren's spell, their faces still pale, their eyes wide with lingering terror, their hands fumbling to cover their ears, some whimpering softly, others clutching crude religious charms, their brief moment of hypnotic longing replaced by a deep, visceral fear. And as the siren's wail faded back into the thick fog, leaving behind only the heavy silence and the ship's creaking timbers, Captain Blackheart swayed slightly, his body trembling with the effort of his resistance, his single eye now open, but filled with a profound exhaustion, a deep, ancient weariness, and Thomas, seeing the captain's vulnerability, felt a surge of concern, a strange bond tightening between them, realizing the immense power Captain Blackheart wrestled with on a daily basis. The constant fight against the ship's dark magic, and the captain, recovering himself, quickly surveyed the shaken crew, his voice regaining its usual gruffness. "Back to your posts! Every man! And keep a sharp eye! The depths, they are watching us! His words were a warning, a reminder that the siren's call was only the beginning, that more, far more dangerous challenges awaited them in the uncharted deep, and the sea serpent continued its journey, cutting through the remaining fog, leaving the siren's ghostly wail behind. But the incident had left its mark on the crew, their fear palpable, their whispers more frequent, their trust in the captain even more shaken. For they had seen his struggle, his raw, exposed vulnerability against an unseen enemy, and the journey grew increasingly strange, the ocean itself seeming to change around them, the water taking on a deeper, almost indigo hue, a color that seemed to absorb the light, making the days feel shorter, the nights longer, and the sea creatures they saw were unlike any Thomas had ever encountered, colossal jellyfish with glowing tentacles that pulsed with an eerie light. Schools of fish with bioluminescent scales that flashed like scattered jewels in the dark water, and huge, ancient whales whose mournful calls seemed to echo from the very heart of the abyss, giants of the deep, silent witnesses to the kraken's ancient slumber. And the air grew colder, heavier, even on sunny days, a damp chill that permeated the ship, seeping into the bones of the crew, a constant reminder of the incredible depths they were now sailing over, a place where the sun's warmth struggled to reach, where the true light was provided by strange, glowing organisms and the ancient magic of the sea. And the compass in Thomas's pocket continued its subtle, silent guidance, its coiled snake symbol glowing with a faint, internal green light whenever they passed over particularly deep trenches or through strange, swirling currents, its pulsations growing stronger, more insistent, as if urging them onward, drawing them towards a specific, unseen point in the vast, dark expanse, a silent, powerful connection to the kraken's heart, the sunken city that awaited them below, and Captain Blackheart, guided by the true log's ancient charts and the compass's subtle directions, steered the sea serpent with an uncanny precision, his single eye fixed on the horizon, his hands steady on the helm, his face etched with a grim determination, a man driven by a desperate hope and a terrible oath, a captain navigating not just a ship, but a path between worlds, a journey into the very heart of darkness, and the crew, now more superstitious than ever, muttered about the captain's strange, almost unnatural navigation, his ability to find a path through the ever-changing, terrifying deep, a path that no other living soul would dare to tread, and some whispered that he was a sorcerer, that he had made a pact with the devil himself, but most simply followed, too afraid to question, too terrified to defy the grim-faced captain who seemed to hold the secrets of the ocean in his scarred hands, and Thomas, now almost completely accepted into the captain's silent trust, spent many hours in the captain's cabin, poring over the true log, cross-referencing its intricate details with the painting on the scroll, the horrifying depiction of the monstrous ship and the kraken's coils now serving as a chillingly accurate map to their destination, and the log detailed the specific challenges they would face, not just the siren's call, but encounters with ancient, unseen guardians, spirits of those who had failed to break the curse, their tormented souls forever bound to protect the kraken's heart, their forms twisted and malevolent, their power immense, and it spoke of illusions, of mind-bending tricks that the kraken would play, attempting to lead them astray, to drive them mad with fear and despair, to make them give up their quest for freedom, and it warned of the whispering depths, a region of the ocean where the very water seemed to speak, carrying the desperate, agonizing cries of countless lost souls, a cacophony of torment that could drive a man insane, making him throw himself into the cold embrace of the abyss, a final, terrifying barrier to the sunken city. And as Thomas read these warnings, his young heart felt a growing sense of dread, realizing the true magnitude of the task before them, but also a fierce resolve, a determination to succeed, to free Captain Blackheart, to free all the souls trapped by the sea serpent and the kraken's curse. A burden that now rested heavily on his small shoulders, a weight he was surprisingly willing to bear. And Captain Blackheart, observing Thomas's unwavering resolve, felt a flicker of pride, a rare, almost forgotten emotion, stirring in his own tormented heart, recognizing the pure, unburdened spirit that the ancient prophecy spoke of, the very soul that might be able to achieve what he, with all his power and experience, could not. And the captain began to confide more in Thomas, sharing details of the ship's dark history, of his attempts to fight the curse in the past, of the rituals he had to perform, the sacrifices he had to make, his voice filled with a deep, personal pain that made Thomas realize the true cost of Blackheart's oath, the unending torment of a man forced to betray his own humanity. And Thomas learned that the ship itself, the timbers, the sails, the very ropes, were imbued with the siren's dark magic, making it not just a vessel, but a part of the monstrous entity. A living extension of the Kraken's will, a terrifying realization that meant every part of the sea serpent was their enemy, every creak a whisper of its malice, every sway a deliberate movement to thwart their mission, and he learned that the dead man's mark on the mast was not just a symbol of the ship's hunger, but a powerful conduit, a magical rune that absorbed the souls of the sacrificed, feeding them directly to the Kraken's heart, strengthening its power, solidifying its hold on the ship. And the wooden figurehead, the sad mermaid, was not just a carving, but the actual physical manifestation of the trapped siren, her beauty a lure, her sorrow a reflection of her eternal imprisonment, her painted eyes sometimes seeming to follow Thomas, a silent, knowing gaze that sent shivers down his spine, a constant reminder of the sentient evil they were sailing upon. And the parrot, Whisper, usually perched on Captain Blackheart's shoulder, was revealed to be more than just a pet, but a spy, a familiar, a small, feathered extension of the siren's will, its beady black eyes constantly watching, its squawks and mimicry carrying important information back to the monstrous entity, its seemingly innocent presence a constant, unsettling surveillance. And Thomas, remembering the strange, intelligent look in Whisper's eyes, the way the pirates avoided its gaze, felt a fresh wave of unease, realizing that even their conversations in the cabin might not be truly private, that every word they spoke, every plan they made, could be overheard and reported back to the cursed ship, making their quest even more precarious, even more dangerous. And the journey continued, a relentless plunge into the deep, the water around them growing darker, colder, the surface of the ocean now rarely touched by sunlight, the sky above often shrouded in thick, swirling clouds that seemed to cling to the mast, a perpetual twilight descending upon them, a gateway to the abyss. And the ship's navigation became increasingly challenging, the currents growing stronger, more erratic, threatening to tear the sea serpent from its course. But Captain Blackheart, his face grim, his resolve unyielding, fought against the ocean's immense power, his scarred hands gripping the helm, his single eye fixed on the compass, its coiled snake symbol now glowing almost constantly with a strong, green light, pulsating rhythmically, guiding them through the treacherous waters, a powerful beacon in the enveloping darkness. And Thomas, observing the compass's intense glow, understood that they were getting closer, closer to the sunken city, closer to the heart of the Kraken, closer to their ultimate destiny, a destiny that promised either freedom or damnation. And the crew, now fully aware that they were in uncharted, dangerous waters, their fear overriding their hunger, and their descent, worked with a grim efficiency, following Captain Blackheart's orders without question, their faces pale, their eyes wide with apprehension, their whispers now focused on prayers and ancient superstitions, hoping to appease the unseen forces that surrounded them, hoping to survive the terrifying journey into the abyss. And one evening, as the ship sailed through a particularly dark and swirling patch of water, a sudden, powerful tremor ran through the sea serpent, a deep, guttural rumble that seemed to come from directly beneath the hull, shaking the ship violently, sending men scrambling for purchase, their frightened shouts echoing in the oppressive gloom. And Thomas, thrown against the railing, looked out into the inky blackness, his heart pounding, and he saw it, a colossal shadow moving just beneath the surface. A monstrous shape of unimaginable size, its outlines barely visible in the dark water, but its immense power undeniable, a terrifying presence that made the very ocean tremble. And then, a huge, black tentacle, thick as the ship's mast, erupted from the water, lashing out at the sea serpent, its suction cups glowing with a faint, otherworldly light, and a collective gasp of terror rose from the crew, for they knew what it was, the true Kraken, not just a legend, but a terrifying reality, a creature of cosmic horror, now awake, now aware of their intrusion. And Captain Blackheart, his face a mask of grim determination, bellowed orders, his voice cutting through the fear. "All hands! To arms! Prepare for battle! The Kraken is upon us! Fight, ye fools, for your very souls!" His words were a rallying cry, a desperate call to arms against an enemy of unimaginable power, and the pirates, momentarily paralyzed by terror, suddenly sprang into action, grabbing their cutlasses, loading their pistols, their fear now replaced by a desperate, animalistic will to survive, a fierce, primal fight for their lives against the monstrous beast, and the ship became a blur of frantic activity, men shouting, cannons roaring, pistols firing, a desperate, chaotic battle against the colossal tentacle that lashed at the sea serpent, its immense strength threatening to tear the ship apart with every blow, but their weapons, mere toys against the kraken's impenetrable hide, seemed to have no effect, the cannonballs bouncing off its scales, the pistol shots doing nothing but annoy the monstrous creature, and Thomas, terrified but strangely resolute, watched the chaotic battle, realizing the futility of their fight. Realizing that their only hope was not to fight the kraken, but to break the curse, to free Captain Blackheart, to contain the monster, and he saw Captain Blackheart, axe in hand, fighting with a furious, almost suicidal bravery, slashing at the tentacle that wrapped around the mast, his single eye burning with a desperate rage, a man willing to sacrifice himself to protect his crew, to protect the world from the kraken's true wrath, a tragic hero fighting against an impossible foe. And as the tentacle tightened its grip on the mast, the wood groaning and splintering under its immense pressure, threatening to tear the mainmast from its base, Captain Blackheart, with a desperate, guttural cry, jammed the wooden compass into the pulsing heart of the dead man's mark on the mast, its coiled snake symbol now glowing with a blinding green light, and with a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very fabric of the ocean, the kraken recoiled, its tentacle whipping away from the ship. A powerful jolt of energy surging through the sea serpent, making the entire vessel shudder violently, as if in pain, and a brilliant green light exploded from the mast, enveloping the ship in its eerie glow, pushing back the darkness, momentarily paralyzing the kraken, and Thomas, thrown to the deck by the force of the explosion, looked up, dazed, and saw the ship itself seem to be fighting back, the figurehead's sad mermaid eyes now glowing with the same green light, its mouth open. Not in a silent scream, but in a silent, powerful roar of defiance. Pushing against the kraken's immense power, and Captain Blackheart, standing by the mast, his body trembling, his face pale but his eyes filled with a grim triumph, shouted, his voice hoarse. "It works! The compass! It channels the ship's own power! It pushes back its binding! Quick, Thomas! To the lower deck! We must find the conduit! The source of the siren's rage! The true log speaks of it. A chamber deep within the hull, where its power is strongest." His words were a desperate command, a new direction in the midst of the chaos, a chance to turn the tide of battle, and Thomas, picking himself up, his arm aching but his spirit renewed with a surge of desperate hope, nodded, and without hesitation, he plunged below deck, the true log's cryptic warnings about the ship's inner workings, its hidden chambers, its magical conduits, now vividly clear in his mind, guiding his every step, and the lower deck was a maze of dimly lit corridors, storage rooms, and creaking timbers, filled with the sounds of the ongoing battle above, the distant roars of the kraken, the shouts of the pirates, the splintering wood, a cacophony of terror, and he navigated the labyrinthine passages, following the faint, pulsing green light that emanated from the compass in his pocket, a silent, powerful guide leading him deeper into the ship's cursed belly. Past the terrified faces of the few remaining crew members who had hidden below deck, past the trembling barrels and swaying hammocks, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm, a drumbeat of desperate purpose, and he finally found it, a heavy, iron-bound door, hidden behind a stack of old fishing nets, its surface covered in strange, swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with the faint, green light, the very same patterns he had seen carved on Captain Blackheart's old wooden cabinet in the cabin, a clear sign that this was the conduit. The log spoke of the source of the siren's power, and he tried to open it, pulling at the heavy iron handle, but it was locked, firmly sealed, imbued with a powerful, ancient magic that resisted his every effort, and then, a horrifying sound ripped through the ship, a deafening crunch that reverberated through the hull, followed by a violent shudder that sent Thomas sprawling to the floor, realizing with a sickening certainty that the kraken had managed to damage the ship even further. Perhaps even tear a hole in its hull, and water, cold and dark, began to seep in from the seams of the planks, slowly, steadily, filling the lower deck, a terrifying race against time as the ship slowly began to sink, and Thomas, scrambling to his feet, knew he had to act, now, before it was too late, before the ship was consumed by the depths, before the Kraken's wrath became irreversible, and he remembered the true log's words about the siren's weakness. About how its power was channeled through specific points on the ship, and he looked at the iron-bound door. Its green glowing patterns pulsating with a malevolent energy, and he knew that this was the key, that this conduit, this chamber, held the true source of the siren's rage, its eternal agony, and he remembered the wooden compass, its coiled snake symbol, and a desperate idea, a reckless gamble, sparked in his mind, an echo of Captain Blackheart's own desperate hope, and with a surge of adrenaline, he pulled the compass from his pocket, its green glow now intensely bright, almost burning his palm, and he pressed it firmly against the center of the iron-bound door, against the largest, most intricate of the swirling patterns, and with a searing hiss and a blinding flash of green light, the patterns on the door seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing like living serpents, absorbing the compass's energy, and then, with a deafening crack that echoed through the entire ship, the door flew open, its heavy iron frame tearing away from the hinges, revealing a small, circular chamber. Its walls pulsing with a blinding, malevolent green light, and in the center, chained to the floor by thick, glowing chains, was a single, monstrous pearl, huge and iridescent, shimmering with all the colors of the deep, but glowing with an intensely sinister green light, the pearl of the abyss, the true heart of the Kraken's power, the source of the siren's rage, and the chamber was filled with a low, mournful hum, a sound that resonated with the siren's earlier wail, a sound of ancient suffering, of eternal torment, and Thomas, stepping into the chamber, felt the immense power of the pearl, a dark, primal energy that threatened to overwhelm his senses, to drive him mad. But he pushed through it, his gaze fixed on the glowing pearl, his heart filled with a fierce determination, and then, from the shadows of the chamber, two figures emerged, their forms vague and shimmering in the green light, spirits. Malevolent and tormented, the guardians, the log had warned about, their faces twisted into masks of agony, their eyes glowing with a faint, green light, their voices a cacophony of desperate whispers, echoing the cries of the lost souls, warning him to turn back, to abandon his quest, to save himself. But Thomas, remembering Captain Blackheart's tragic story, his lost family, the endless hunger of the sea serpent, refused to yield, his pure heart unburdened by greed, his soul seeking only freedom, not power, and he knew he had to destroy the pearl, to sever the serpent's binding, to fulfill the ancient prophecy. But how? It was chained, protected, pulsating with immense, dark power, and the guardians, with a chilling, guttural roar, lunged at him, their spectral forms swirling like smoke, their hands reaching out, intending to drag him into their eternal torment, to make him another guardian, another lost soul bound to the Kraken's heart. But just as they reached him, a sudden, powerful surge of green light erupted from the compass in his pocket, its coiled snake symbol now blazing with an unearthly glow, a shield of pure magic enveloping Thomas, pushing back the attacking spirits, their tormented cries turning into whimpers of pain as the compass's light burned them, and Thomas, realizing the compass's true power, its ability to channel the ship's own magic, its connection to the siren, knew what he had to do, and he pulled the compass out, holding it up, its green light blazing, directing its raw power towards the pearl of the abyss. And with a desperate, guttural cry, he slammed the compass against the pulsing, green pearl, a deafening crash echoing through the chamber, and a blinding flash of green light, so intense it burned his eyes, erupted from the pearl, enveloping the entire chamber, the entire ship, in its raw, untamed power, and a sound unlike any other, a sound of ancient agony and a sudden, profound release, ripped through the air, a final, deafening shriek that seemed to come from the very depths of the ocean. The death cry of the siren, and then, slowly, agonizingly, the green light began to fade, the pulsating pearl of the abyss cracking, splintering, its immense power diminishing, its malevolent glow dying, and the chains that bound it to the floor snapped, turning to dust, and the chamber, which had been bathed in green light, now fell into a deep, profound darkness, broken only by the faint, flickering emergency lamps, and the guardians, their spectral forms dissolving, their tormented whispers fading into nothingness, finally found peace, their souls released from their eternal torment, their purpose fulfilled, and Thomas, dazed but alive, stood in the now dark, silent chamber, the broken pieces of the pearl of the abyss scattered around him, its power gone, its curse broken, and the compass in his hand, which had glowed so brightly, was now dark, cold, inert, its coiled snake symbol faded, its magic spent, its purpose fulfilled. And a profound silence descended upon the sea serpent, the creaking of its timbers, the distant lapping of waves. Now sounding normal, natural, no longer imbued with the sinister whispers of a cursed ship, and Thomas, staggering out of the chamber, his body aching, his arms still throbbing, made his way back to the main deck, the water on the lower decks slowly receding, a sign that the ship's wounds were healing, its monstrous nature finally contained, and as he emerged onto the main deck, the first rays of the true sun, warm and golden, touched his face, a beautiful contrast to the green horrors he had just battled, and he saw Captain Blackheart, slumped against the mast, his body trembling, his face pale, but his single eye now wide, clear, and filled with an emotion Thomas had never seen there before, relief, pure, unadulterated relief, and a profound, overwhelming sense of freedom, and around him, the pirates, battered and bruised from their futile fight against the Kraken's tentacle, lay scattered on the deck. Exhausted but alive, their faces pale, their eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and a dazed disbelief, as the Kraken, its immense tentacle now limp and lifeless, slowly, agonizingly, sank back into the depths, its roars silenced, its power contained, its curse finally broken, and Captain Blackheart, seeing Thomas, pushed himself up, his body still weak but his spirit soaring, and he looked at the boy, his voice hoarse but filled with an overwhelming gratitude. "You did it, lad. You truly did it. The curse, it's broken. The Kraken, it's contained. And I am free. Free at last." His words were a testament to Thomas's courage, to the purity of his heart, to the impossible feat he had achieved, and Thomas, tears stinging his eyes, felt a surge of triumph, a profound sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had not just saved himself, but had freed Captain Blackheart, had released countless souls, and had ended the Kraken's endless hunger, a battle won against a cosmic horror. A victory for freedom against eternal damnation, and Captain Blackheart, limping towards him, pulled him into a rough, unexpected embrace, a powerful hug that spoke volumes of his gratitude, his redemption, his newfound humanity, and then he looked around at his bewildered crew, their faces etched with confusion, trying to make sense of the sudden calm, the disappearance of the Kraken, the changed atmosphere of the ship, and he raised his voice, his booming command now filled with a new authority. An authority born of true freedom. "Hear me, lads! The sea serpent is free! The curse of the Kraken is broken! No more sacrifices! No more darkness! We sail under a new dawn! Towards true freedom! Towards a new life!" His words, though met with initial confusion, slowly began to sink in, and a ripple of understanding, then a wave of cheers, erupted from the battered crew, their faces slowly lighting up with hope, their fears replaced by a burgeoning sense of joy, their lives, once bound by a monstrous curse, now suddenly, miraculously, free, and the ship, which had been a vessel of torment, now felt like a ship of salvation. Its timbers creaking with a newfound lightness, its sails unfurling with a fresh, eager purpose, sailing under a sky that was truly blue, a sun that was truly golden, towards a horizon that promised not doom, but endless possibility, and Thomas, standing beside Captain Blackheart, looking out at the vast, open ocean, felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet joy that filled his young heart, knowing that his journey, his terrifying ordeal, had led to this moment, to freedom, to redemption, to a new beginning. Not just for himself, but for a cursed captain, for a tormented crew, and for all the souls who had been lost to the sea serpent's deadly hunger, a victory against the strange and deadly truth about life on a pirate ship, a truth that had been conquered, a curse that had been broken, and the ocean, once a source of terror, now stretched before them, vast and inviting, a path to a future filled with unknown adventures, but also, for the first time in a very long time, a future filled with true, unburdened hope. A journey that had redefined the very meaning of life and death on the high seas, transforming fear into courage, despair into hope, and a monstrous curse into an epic tale of freedom, A story that would be whispered in taverns and sung in sea shanties for generations to come. A legend of the cabin boy with a pure heart who faced the Kraken and won. A testament to the power of unwavering resolve and the enduring spirit of humanity. A spirit that had defied the ancient evil of the deep, bringing forth a new era of freedom and peace to the once cursed waters. A truth that now sailed gloriously under the sun. A vibrant and awe-inspiring testament to the incredible strength found in the most unexpected places, within the heart of a young, brave cabin boy, whose journey had just begun its next, uncharted chapter. The morning sun, now truly bright and welcoming, not just a promise but a reality, bathed the deck of the Sea Serpent in a golden glow, chasing away the last lingering shadows of the Kraken's curse, and Thomas, standing tall beside Captain Blackheart, felt the warmth on his face, a feeling of deep, profound relief that washed over him like a gentle wave, replacing the cold dread that had been his constant companion for so long, and the ship, which had groaned and moaned with suffering for years, now seemed to breathe with a newfound lightness, its timbers creaking with a different tune, a song of freedom, of peace, its sails, once tattered and dark, catching the wind with a fresh, eager purpose, pushing them steadily across the calm, blue waters, away from the abyss, away from the memories of the cursed depths, and the crew, who had moments ago been bewildered and terrified, now stood on the deck, their faces slowly transforming, the lines of fear softening, the shadows of despair lifting, replaced by looks of dazed wonder, then growing smiles, then cheers that erupted like a joyful thunderclap, echoing across the ocean. A cacophony of relief and celebration, a chorus of men reborn, their voices hoarse but filled with an overwhelming joy, for they were free, truly free, from the monstrous hunger of the sea serpent, from the terrifying wrath of the Kraken, and from the grim, silent burden of Captain Blackheart's oath, and Grubb, the cook, usually a figure of quiet sorrow, now danced a clumsy jig on the deck, his face split into a wide, almost childlike grin, his eyes, once filled with despair, now sparkling with tears of pure happiness, as he hugged a bewildered deckhand, his booming laughter, now truly joyous, filling the air, a sound of unburdened mirth that Thomas had never heard from him before, a true testament to the profound change that had swept over the ship, and the other pirates, their weapons, once held in desperate defense, now clanged against the deck as they dropped them, embracing each other, slapping backs, their rough voices raised in shouts of relief, of disbelief, of overwhelming gratitude, their eyes, once hard and wary, now soft with a shared sense of miraculous escape, and Captain Blackheart, though still pale and weary from his long, terrible struggle, stood straighter, his shoulders, once stooped under the weight of his curse, and he looked at Thomas, his gaze filled with a deep, unspoken gratitude, a bond forged in the crucible of cosmic horror, a shared victory against an impossible foe, and he clapped a heavy hand on Thomas's small shoulder, his voice, though still hoarse, now clear and strong, filled with a new authority, an authority born of true leadership, of redemption. To the helm, lads! A new course! Towards any port that welcomes free men! Towards a new life! For the Sea Serpent sails under a new flag today! A flag of freedom! His words were met with another roaring cheer from the crew, a wave of renewed energy sweeping through the ship, and the pirates, with a newfound enthusiasm, rushed to their stations, pulling ropes, adjusting sails, their movements filled with a lightness that had been absent for years, their faces eager, hopeful, looking towards a horizon that was no longer a symbol of dread, but of endless possibility, and Thomas, watching the transformed crew, felt a swelling of pride in his chest, a deep satisfaction in knowing that his courage, his unwavering belief, had brought about this incredible change, that he had not just saved himself, but an entire ship, an entire crew, from an eternity of torment, and he looked out at the vast, open ocean, its blue waters now sparkling under the benevolent sun, no longer a dark, ominous expanse, but an inviting path to unknown adventures. A path to a future he had only dreamed of in his darkest moments, a future filled with true, unburdened hope, and the ship, the Sea Serpent, once a symbol of fear and suffering, now felt like a majestic vessel of salvation, cutting through the waves with a grace and speed that was almost breathtaking, as if it too had shed its heavy curse, its monstrous spirit replaced by a gentle, guiding presence. And Thomas remembered the wooden compass, now dark and inert in his pocket, its coiled snake symbol faded, its magic spent, its purpose fulfilled. A tangible reminder of the ancient evil they had conquered, a silent trophy of their hard-won freedom, and he thought of the pearl of the abyss, shattered and broken, its malevolent glow extinguished, its chains turned to dust, a cosmic horror reduced to mere fragments, its power contained, its hunger ended, a chilling victory that still sent shivers down his spine. But now, shivers of awe, not fear, and the guardians, those tormented spirits, finally found peace. Their whispered agony replaced by a profound silence, their souls released from their eternal torment, their purpose fulfilled, a quiet blessing that resonated deep within Thomas's heart, a recognition of the ultimate good that had come from their desperate quest, and the sun continued its ascent, painting the sky with an even richer tapestry of colors, oranges, reds, and purples blending seamlessly, a glorious display that seemed to celebrate their victory, a new dawn truly breaking over the ocean, symbolizing the new life that awaited them all, and Captain Blackheart, standing beside Thomas at the helm, his hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder, looked out at the boundless horizon, a profound peace on his scarred face, a peace that had been denied him for countless years, a hard-won serenity that spoke of a soul finally at rest, finally free from its terrible burden, and he spoke, his voice soft, almost reflective. "The world is wide, lad. Wider than you can imagine. And now, it is yours to explore. No more shadows. No more curses. Just the open sea. And true freedom." His words were a gift, a promise of a future filled with endless possibilities, a future Thomas had never dared to dream of, and Thomas nodded, his eyes shining with a mixture of awe and excitement. "But what about you, Captain? Where will you go?" Blackheart looked at him, a rare, gentle smile gracing his lips. "Me? I shall go wherever the winds take me, Thomas. Wherever the sea serpent wishes to sail. Perhaps I shall seek out old friends. Perhaps I shall simply enjoy the silence. The true silence. The one that is not born of dread, but of peace." His answer was simple, profound, a testament to the complete transformation of his spirit, a man who had faced the deepest darkness and emerged into the brightest light, a true hero in his own right, and the sea serpent continued its journey, cutting through the waves with a joyous momentum, carrying its newly freed crew towards an unknown future, a future filled with the promise of adventure, of discovery, of genuine human connection, a stark contrast to the cruel, isolated life they had endured for so long, and Thomas, during the days that followed, watched as the ship slowly, wonderfully, transformed, not just in spirit, but in small, subtle ways that reflected its newfound freedom. The dark, splintered wood of its hull seemed to regain a natural sheen, the tattered sails, though still patched, seemed to mend themselves slightly, as if the ship itself was healing from its long torment, shedding the visible scars of its curse. And the air on deck, once thick with tension and despair, now buzzed with cheerful chatter, with the sounds of sea shanties sung not from fear, but from genuine joy, their voices ringing out across the waves, songs of triumph and hope, of new beginnings. And Grubb, the cook, now truly jolly, filled the galley with the aroma of freshly baked bread and rich stews, his cooking, once meager and bland, now hearty and delicious, a true feast for the revitalized crew, whose appetites, once dulled by fear, now returned with a joyful vengeance, their laughter echoing through the ship as they ate, sharing stories and dreams of the future, a future they now believed in. And Captain Blackheart, though still a man of few words, spent more time on deck, interacting with his crew, his voice softer, his manner more approachable, sharing tales of his past adventures, his eyes still sharp, but now filled with a deep kindness, a quiet wisdom, and he often sought out Thomas, engaging him in conversations about navigation, about the stars, about the wonders of the ocean, treating him not just as a cabin boy, but as an equal, a trusted companion, a fellow adventurer, a bond that grew stronger with each passing day, a mentorship born of shared hardship and mutual respect. And Thomas, no longer just a cabin boy, but now a valued member of the crew, felt a surge of confidence, a blossoming of his own potential, as he learned from Captain Blackheart, absorbing his vast knowledge of the sea, his wisdom, his leadership, preparing himself for whatever unknown challenges and adventures lay ahead, knowing that his journey had truly just begun. And the parrot, Whisper, once a silent, ominous spy, now perched on Captain Blackheart's shoulder, its vibrant green and gold feathers gleaming in the sun, no longer squawked cryptic warnings, but mimicked cheerful phrases, whistling catchy tunes, its beady black eyes now filled with a playful mischief. A delightful companion rather than a terrifying informant, its transformation a small but significant symbol of the ship's complete freedom from the siren's dark influence, and the crew, now free from the fear of the dead man's mark and the Kraken's hunger, spoke openly of their plans for the future, of returning home to their families, of seeking new lives on distant shores, of using their newfound freedom to build a better world, their voices filled with a vibrant hope, a genuine excitement for the paths that now lay open before them, and Thomas, listening to their dreams, felt a deep sense of connection, a feeling of belonging to this new, redeemed family, a family of free men, united by their shared ordeal and their triumphant escape from darkness. And the sea serpent sailed onward, its path guided not by a cursed compass, but by the will of its free captain, by the collective dreams of its unburdened crew, heading towards a future that was no longer predetermined by a monstrous curse, but shaped by their own choices, their own hopes, their own courage, a future vast and inviting, filled with the promise of new lands, new people, new adventures, a true golden age for the sea serpent and its crew. And as the weeks turned into months, the ship traveled across vast oceans, exploring uncharted territories, discovering hidden islands, trading with friendly, peaceful communities, living a life of true adventure and freedom, far removed from the brutal, terrifying existence of their past. And Thomas, growing taller, stronger, his hands more capable, his mind sharper, continued to learn from Captain Blackheart, becoming an accomplished sailor, a skilled navigator, a trusted first mate, his young spirit blossoming under the captain's guidance, his heart filled with a quiet joy, a deep appreciation for the incredible journey that had brought him to this unexpected, wonderful place, and he often found himself standing at the bow of the ship, the salty wind in his hair, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, a small, knowing smile on his face, remembering the terrifying truth about life on a pirate ship, remembering the Kraken, the siren, the curse. But now, those memories were not of fear, but of a hard-won victory, a testament to the power of courage, of hope, of unwavering resolve, a story to tell, a legend to share, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, even in the most monstrous of circumstances, the human spirit, especially a pure heart unburdened by greed, could find a way to defy fate, to break curses, to forge its own path to freedom. And the sea serpent, now truly a vessel of peace and exploration, continued its endless journey across the sparkling blue waters, carrying its crew towards new adventures, towards a future filled with light, laughter, and the boundless possibilities of the open sea, a magnificent testament to the transformation of fear into courage, despair into hope, and a monstrous curse into an epic tale of freedom. A story that would be whispered in taverns and sung in sea shanties for generations to come, a legend of the cabin boy with a pure heart who faced the Kraken and won, a testament to the power of unwavering resolve and the enduring spirit of humanity, a spirit that had defied the ancient evil of the deep, bringing forth a new era of freedom and peace to the once cursed waters, a truth that now sailed gloriously under the sun, a vibrant and awe-inspiring testament to the incredible strength found in the most unexpected places. Within the heart of a young, brave cabin boy, whose journey had transformed him from a helpless victim into a beacon of hope, a true hero of the high seas, his story echoing across the waves, inspiring all who heard it to seek their own freedom, to face their own fears, and to believe in the impossible, for on the sea serpent, under the command of a redeemed captain and his courageous young first mate, life was no longer about survival in darkness, but about thriving in the brilliant light of a boundless future. A future where every sunrise brought new wonders, every sunset a peaceful rest, and every journey a glorious adventure, a true testament to the strange and deadly truth about life on a pirate ship, now rewritten into a saga of unparalleled triumph and boundless freedom, a testament to the fact that even the most ancient evils can be overcome by the simplest, purest acts of courage, and that the greatest treasures are not gold or jewels, but the freedom of the soul and the peace of a heart unburdened by fear, a legacy that would ripple through the ocean's history, forever changing the tales of the sea, making the sea serpent a symbol not of dread, but of ultimate hope, a vessel sailing towards eternity, carrying the legend of Thomas, the cabin boy who freed a ship, a captain, and countless souls from the deadly coils of the Kraken's curse, his adventure continuing far beyond the horizon, into realms unknown, forever etched into the vast, beautiful tapestry of the ocean itself, a truly epic and unending story of courage, redemption, and the boundless spirit of adventure. As the sea serpents sailed further into this golden age of freedom, the ocean stretching endlessly before them, a canvas of sparkling blue under a perpetually kind sun, Thomas found himself increasingly drawn to the quiet moments, to the serene beauty of the sea that now felt like a benevolent guardian rather than a terrifying monster, and he would often stand at the bow, the salty spray kissing his face, feeling the ship's gentle sway, a rhythm of peace that resonated deep within his soul, a stark contrast to the violent, unpredictable lurching it once had under the Kraken's curse, and he remembered the countless hours he had spent scrubbing decks, polishing brass, his small body aching with fatigue, his heart heavy with dread, those days now feeling like a distant, terrible dream, a nightmare from which he had finally awoken into a world of vibrant reality, where the air tasted of salt and hope, and every sunrise brought a fresh wave of quiet joy. A profound appreciation for the simple act of being alive, truly alive, and free, and Captain Blackheart, now often joining him at the bow, his scarred face softened by an inner peace, would sometimes share stories of his own youth, tales of daring escapades and forgotten islands, his voice, once gruff and guarded, now rich with a newfound warmth, a shared humanity that bound them together, mentor and apprentice, survivor and redeemer. Their bond forged in the crucible of cosmic horror, now strengthened by shared dreams of a boundless future, and he spoke of the true meaning of leadership, not just commanding men, but inspiring them, guiding them towards a common purpose, a purpose born of freedom and respect, lessons that Thomas absorbed like a sponge, his keen young mind grasping the nuances of command, the responsibilities that came with guiding a ship and its crew, and he learned about celestial navigation, about reading the stars like an open book, about understanding the subtle shifts in the wind and currents, the ancient wisdom of the sea passed down from captain to first mate, a legacy of knowledge that was now Thomas's to inherit, and the crew, now a true family, not just a band of desperate men, continued to transform. Their faces, once etched with hardship, now bore the marks of joy and camaraderie, their laughter ringing out across the waves, a constant symphony of human connection. A sound that filled the sea serpent with a vibrant, living energy, a testament to the power of shared liberation. And Grubb, the cook, now a master of hearty, delicious meals, his galley overflowing with the aromas of roasted meats and freshly baked pies, became a central figure of comfort and cheer, his booming laughter a familiar and welcome sound, his stories, once filled with dark warnings, now tales of the ship's miraculous redemption, of the brave cabin boy who faced the Kraken and won. A legend in the making, whispered with awe and respect, and whisper. The parrot, now a beloved mascot rather than a watchful spy, would often fly freely around the ship, landing on the shoulders of different crewmates, squawking cheerful greetings, mimicking their laughter, its vibrant feathers a splash of brilliant color against the blue sky, a living symbol of the sea serpent's newfound happiness, a delightful companion that brought smiles to every face, and Thomas, no longer just a cabin boy, but Captain Blackheart's trusted first mate, his hands capable, his mind sharp, his heart pure, felt his own spirit soaring, a powerful sense of purpose guiding his every action, his every decision, as he embraced his new role, his journey from a frightened orphan to a beacon of hope now a living reality, an ongoing adventure on the vast, beautiful ocean, and he often found himself looking at the distant horizon, not with fear, but with a profound sense of wonder, knowing that this endless expanse held countless new discoveries, new lands to explore, new cultures to understand, new challenges to overcome, all within the boundless possibilities of their newfound freedom, and they continued to explore, venturing into waters unknown to any European charts, discovering islands where the trees bore fruits of unimaginable sweetness, where birds sang songs of ethereal beauty, where the sand glittered with precious jewels, and where the people, untouched by the harshness of the outside world, lived in simple, peaceful harmony with nature, their faces etched with a serene wisdom, their eyes sparkling with a gentle curiosity, and on one such island, a place of breathtaking beauty, with towering waterfalls that shimmered like liquid silver and dense forests filled with exotic, fragrant flowers, they encountered a tribe of people whose skin was as dark as polished ebony, their eyes as bright as emeralds, and their traditions as ancient as the sea itself. And these people, called the Guardians by Captain Blackheart, lived in harmony with the ocean, understanding its whispers, respecting its power, their lives woven into the very fabric of the sea, and they welcomed the sea serpent and its crew with open arms, their faces filled with a genuine warmth, their voices soft and melodious, sharing their abundant harvests, their vibrant dances, and their ancient wisdom, a profound exchange of cultures, a bridge built between two vastly different worlds. And Thomas, captivated by their peaceful way of life, spent hours learning their language, their customs, their intricate knowledge of the stars and the tides, discovering a deep connection to the natural world that resonated with his own pure heart, a profound sense of belonging that he had never known before. And the Guardians, in turn, were fascinated by the sea serpent, by its sails, its compass, its ability to travel across vast distances. But they seemed particularly drawn to Captain Blackheart, their wise elders observing him with a respectful curiosity, sensing the ancient magic that still lingered around him, the echoes of his past torment. And Thomas learned from the Guardians that their island was one of the many ancient outposts of a forgotten civilization, a civilization that had once lived in harmony with the Kraken, not as a monster, but as a protector, a powerful spirit of the deep that maintained the balance of the ocean. And they spoke of a time when the Kraken had been revered, its power a force for good, its roars a warning against those who sought to exploit the sea, a vastly different legend from the terrifying curse that had bound the sea serpent. And the elders explained that the Kraken's curse, the one that had tormented Captain Blackheart, was not a natural state, but an imbalance, a corruption of its true purpose, caused by an ancient artifact, a dark relic that had fallen into the wrong hands centuries ago. A relic that had twisted the Kraken's protective energy into a destructive hunger, turning it into the very monster they had fought, a profound revelation that cast a new light on their previous struggle. And Thomas, his mind racing with this new information, realized that while they had contained the Kraken's power, they hadn't truly freed it. They had only suppressed its corrupted form, and that the true solution lay in finding this ancient artifact, this source of its corruption, and restoring the Kraken to its original, benevolent state, a task that seemed even more daunting than defeating the monster itself, but also a task filled with a new, deeper purpose, a moral imperative to correct an ancient wrong, to bring true peace to the ocean. And he shared this new understanding with Captain Blackheart, who listened intently, his scarred face grim, his single eye filled with a renewed sense of purpose, a deep resolve to finally, truly, redeem his past, to complete the unfinished business of the curse. The true curse, an artifact. So the ancient legends were right. There's always a source, a point of corruption. We must find it, Thomas. For the Kraken's true freedom. For the balance of the ocean. His voice was firm, resolute, a renewed determination burning in his soul, a final quest for redemption, not just for himself, but for the very spirit of the sea. And the Guardians, seeing their resolve, offered their help, their elders revealing ancient maps, not of land, but of currents, of forgotten underwater passages, of hidden grottos and sunken ruins. Maps that spoke of a labyrinthine network of caves beneath their island, caves that led to the abyssal heart, the deepest, most sacred part of their world, where the ancient artifact, the source of the Kraken's corruption, was said to be hidden, protected by powerful, spiritual wards. And they warned that the abyssal heart was a place of immense spiritual power, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where ancient energies pulsed with an untamed force, a place that demanded respect, purity of heart, and an unwavering spirit. A challenge far greater than any physical battle, a journey into the spiritual core of the ocean's ancient magic. And Thomas and Captain Blackheart, guided by the Guardians' wisdom and their ancient maps, prepared for this new, perilous journey, a journey that would take them not across the open sea, but into the very depths of the earth, into a realm of ancient mystery and untamed power. And the crew, now fully trusting their captain and his young first mate, watched with a quiet awe as they prepared. Understanding the profound significance of their quest, their voices filled with encouragement, with prayers for their safe return, a collective hope that resonated through the sea serpent, strengthening their resolve. And they descended into the dark, watery caves beneath the island, the air growing thick with the smell of damp earth and ancient stone, the only light provided by the glowing moss that clung to the cave walls, casting an ethereal, green luminescence that danced with their shadows, creating a mystical, dreamlike atmosphere, and the caves were a maze of narrow passages and vast, echoing caverns, filled with the constant sound of dripping water, of distant, unseen currents, a subterranean world of breathtaking beauty and silent, ancient power, and they navigated the treacherous paths, their bare feet finding purchase on slippery rocks, their hands brushing against cold, damp stone, their senses heightened, their minds focused on the task at hand, guided by the compass, which, though inert above ground, now pulsed faintly with a warm internal glow, its coiled snake symbol subtly responding to the ancient energies of the abyssal heart, a silent guide in the mystical darkness, and they encountered strange, glowing fungi that pulsed with soft light, ancient, blind fish that swam in the subterranean rivers, and enormous, iridescent crystals that grew from the cave ceilings, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow, a breathtaking display of nature's hidden wonders. And as they went deeper, the air grew heavier, thicker, imbued with a powerful, almost palpable spiritual energy that hummed around them, a sensation that made Thomas's skin tingle, a feeling of being in the presence of something truly ancient, truly powerful, a place where the very fabric of reality felt different, and they finally reached the entrance to the abyssal heart, a massive, circular chamber carved out of pure obsidian, its walls shimmering with intricate, glowing symbols that pulsed with a deep, violet light, a sacred space filled with an immense, silent power that resonated through their very bones, and in the center of the chamber, suspended above a swirling pool of luminous, blue water, was the ancient artifact, a dark, obsidian orb, no larger than Thomas's fist, but radiating a malevolent, suffocating aura, a palpable darkness that seemed to absorb all light, all hope, the source of the Kraken's corruption. The dark relic that had twisted its benevolent power into a destructive curse, and surrounding the orb, shimmering like ghostly guardians, were ancient spirits, not tormented souls, but powerful, ethereal beings, their forms made of swirling mist and starlight, their eyes burning with a fierce, protective light, the true guardians of the abyssal heart, their silent presence a powerful warning against anyone who dared to disturb the ancient artifact. And Captain Blackheart, his face grim, his hand resting on the hilt of his cutlass, looked at the glowing spirits, then at the dark orb, his voice a low whisper. "This is it, Thomas. The source. The true evil." Thomas nodded, his young heart filled with a mixture of awe and a quiet fear, but his resolve unwavering. "How do we stop it, Captain? How do we free the Kraken?" Captain Blackheart looked at the Algardian's map, then back at the orb, his finger tracing a faint, almost invisible symbol on the parchment. "The map speaks of a counter-ritual. A song of balance. An ancient melody that can purify the artifact. But it must be sung by a pure heart. A voice unburdened by malice. A soul that seeks only harmony." His words were a challenge, a task that required not strength of arms, but purity of spirit, a sacred act of redemption, and Thomas, remembering the Algardian's stories of the Kraken as a benevolent protector, felt a profound connection to this ancient task, a deep understanding of its spiritual significance, and he knew, instinctively, that this was his role, his final act of courage, his purest offering. And he looked at Captain Blackheart, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. "I will do it, Captain. I will sing the song. For the Kraken. For the ocean. For all of us." Captain Blackheart looked at him, his single eye filled with a deep pride, a silent acknowledgement of Thomas's unwavering spirit. "Then so be it, lad. The fate of the ocean rests in your voice." And Thomas, stepping forward, his small figure strangely powerful in the vast, echoing chamber, walked towards the swirling pool of luminous water, towards the dark, obsidian orb, the ancient guardians watching him with a silent, assessing gaze, their ethereal forms shimmering, their protective energy pulsing, and he stood at the edge of the pool, the luminous water casting a soft, blue glow on his face. And he looked at the dark orb, its malevolent aura pressing down on him, trying to crush his spirit, to fill him with despair, but he closed his eyes, remembering the gentle hills of his homeland, the soothing touch of his mother, the laughter of the freed crew, the joyous spirit of the sea serpent, all the light and goodness he had found, and he began to sing, his voice, at first soft and trembling, then growing stronger, clearer, resonating through the obsidian chamber, a simple, ancient melody, a song of balance, of harmony, of peace, a melody taught to him by the Algardians. A song that spoke of the ocean's beauty, of the kraken's true purpose, of the interconnectedness of all life. And as his pure voice filled the chamber, the glowing symbols on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with his song, the violet light dancing with the blue of the water, and the ancient guardians, their fierce protective light softening, began to sway gently, their ethereal forms swirling in graceful patterns. Their eyes now filled with a profound understanding, a silent acceptance of his pure intent, and the dark, obsidian orb, which had radiated malevolence, began to flicker, its oppressive aura slowly diminishing, the suffocating darkness receding, replaced by a faint, internal glow, a soft, emerald light that pulsed with a newfound purity. And as Thomas reached the climax of the song, his voice strong and clear, filled with the boundless spirit of freedom, the obsidian orb shimmered violently. Then, with a soft crack, it split open, not shattering, but revealing its true core, a pulsating, brilliant emerald crystal, radiating an immense, benevolent energy that filled the entire chamber with a soft, warm, green light, a light that felt like life itself, pure and untamed, the true heart of the kraken, now freed from its corruption, and the malevolent darkness that had once permeated the chamber completely vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace, of balance, of ancient harmony. A profound spiritual calm that settled over everyone, a sacred moment of redemption. And the ancient guardians, their forms now brighter, more vibrant, bowed their heads in silent reverence, their eyes filled with gratitude, their mission fulfilled, their ancient vigil finally at an end. And Captain Blackheart, standing by the entrance, watched with awe, his scarred face alight with wonder, his single eye filled with tears, tears not of sorrow, but of profound, overwhelming joy, a man witnessing a miracle,